The slap echoed like a gunshot through the crowded diner. A 76-year-old widow crashed to the floor, blood streaming from her split lip, her glasses skidding across the cold tiles. 40 people watched. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. The bully stood over her trembling body, laughing, spitting near her face, calling her worthless. She lay there alone, bleeding, humiliated, forgotten. But 400 miles away, a phone was ringing in a dark garage, and the man answering it, her son, had a Hell's Angels patch buried in his closet and a monster sleeping in his chest. That monster just woke up. Subscribe now and follow this story to the end. Comment your city, let me see how far justice travels. Grace Ellen Hartley woke at 5:47 a.m., same as every morning for the past 18 years. Her bones ached. Her heart ached worse. She sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the empty pillow beside her, the one Thomas used to sleep on before the factory accident took him. Another day, she whispered to no one. Just get through another day. She shuffled to the kitchen, started the coffee maker, and looked out the window at the Arizona desert stretching endlessly toward the mountains. Somewhere out there on some highway, she couldn't name, her son was riding. Or maybe he wasn't. Maybe he was dead. She hadn't heard from Ryder in 8 months. The last postcard came from Wyoming. 3 words, still breathing, Ma. That was her son, a man of few words and fewer visits. She poured her coffee, added 2 sugars. Thomas always said she had a sweet tooth, and noticed her hands shaking more than usual. 76 years old, widow, alone, the holy trinity of invisibility. But today she decided she would walk to town. She would sit at the Dusty Spoon Diner like she used to when Thomas was alive. She would drink coffee among people, even if none of them talked to her, even if none of them saw her. At least she wouldn't be alone. The walk took 40 minutes. It used to take 15. Grace stopped 3 times to catch her breath, leaning against fence posts, watching tumbleweeds roll across the cracked pavement of Route 66. Copper Ridge wasn't much of a town anymore. Population 847 and shrinking every year. The young people left for Phoenix or Los Angeles. The old people stayed and waited to die. Grace fit right in. She pushed open the door of the Dusty Spoon and the smell hit her. Bacon grease, burnt toast, and that particular staleness of a place that hadn't changed its decor since 1987. The breakfast crowd filled maybe half the tables. Truckers, miners, a few retired folks like herself. Maya Reyes looked up from behind the counter and smiled. 24 years old, single mother working double shifts to keep her daughter fed. She was the only person in this town who still treated Grace like a human being. Miss Grace, haven't seen you in weeks. You okay? Grace managed a small smile. Needed some air. And your coffee? Same table? Same table. Maya led her to the booth by the window, the one Grace and Thomas always shared on Sunday mornings, back when Sunday mornings meant something. Coffee's coming right up. You want the usual blueberry muffin? Just coffee today, dear, watching my figure. Maya laughed. Miss Grace, you're perfect the way you are. Grace watched the young woman walk away and felt something she rarely felt any more: warmth. Small kindnesses. They kept you alive when everything else was trying to kill you. She wrapped her hands around the coffee cup when it arrived, letting the heat seep into her arthritic fingers. Outside, a truck rumbled past. Inside, conversations murmured like distant radio static. Normal morning, peaceful morning. Then the door slammed open. 3 men walked in like they owned the place. Heavy boots, expensive watches, the kind of confidence that comes from having money and no conscience. The one in front was the biggest barrel chest, thick neck, a face that looked like it had been punched many times and enjoyed every minute of it. Vince Barone. Grace knew the name. Everyone in Copper Ridge knew the name. He worked for some developer from Las Vegas. For months, he'd been buying up land around Red Canyon Lake, pressuring elderly homeowners to sell cheap. Some agreed, some didn't. The ones who didn't, things happened. Barn fires, dead livestock, broken windows in the middle of the night. Nobody could prove anything. Sheriff Dawson certainly wasn't trying. Vince scanned the room with the lazy arrogance of a predator who knew no one would challenge him. His eyes stopped on Grace. Well, well, well. He walked toward her table. His 2 men followed, positioning themselves to block any exit. Mrs. Hartley Wright, the widow. Grace's heart began to pound. She kept her voice steady. Can I help you? Matter of fact, you can. Vince slid into the booth across from her, uninvited, his bulk making the old leather creak. See my employer, Mr. Dominic Crane? He's a patient man, but his patience is running out. I don't know any Dominic Crane. Sure you do. He's the man who's offered you $60,000 for that little patch of dirt you call a home. Fair price, generous even for property out here. Grace's hands tightened around her coffee cup. My home is not for sale. Everything's for sale, sweetheart. The question is whether you get paid or whether you just lose it. The diner had gone quiet. Conversation stopped. Forks paused halfway to mouths. Everyone was listening, but no one was looking. Maya stood frozen behind the counter, eyes wide. Grace took a breath. 18 years of loneliness had taught her patience. 18 years of grief had taught her that the worst had already happened. Mr. Baroni, that land belonged to my husband. He worked 30 years to pay it off. He died on it. I intend to die on it too. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'd like to finish my coffee. Vince laughed. It wasn't a pleasant sound. You think I'm asking, lady? I'm telling. Crane's building a resort on that lake. 300 rooms. Golf course. Casino. That's $200 million in development. You think some old bag sitting on 2 acres is going to stop that? I'm not trying to stop anything. I'm just not selling. Vince leaned forward. She could smell whiskey on his breath, cigar smoke in his clothes. Let me be clear. You have until Friday. Sign the papers. Take the money, relocate to some nice nursing home, or things get complicated. Are you threatening me? I'm educating you. Grace looked around the diner, at the truckers who suddenly found their eggs fascinating, at the miners who stared out windows, at the retired folks who studied their napkins like they contained the secrets of the universe. Nobody met her eyes, 40 people, and she was completely alone. When something shifted in Grace. Maybe it was the 18 years of silence. Maybe it was the memory of Thomas telling her to never let anyone push her around. Maybe it was the simple, tired realization that she had nothing left to lose. Mr. Baroni, I've buried a husband. I've watched my son disappear into a life I can't understand. I've spent nearly 2 decades alone in a town that pretends I don't exist. You think you can scare me? Vince's smile flickered. I've had breakfast with fear every morning since Thomas died. We're old friends, so take your threats and your boss's money and get out of this diner. I'm not signing anything. The silence that followed was absolute. Maya's hand crept toward her phone. Vince's face reddened, his jaw tightened, his men exchanged glances. You just made a big mistake, Grandma. Maybe, but it's my mistake to make. Vince stood up slowly, his chair scraping against the floor. He looked around the diner, making sure everyone was watching. You all see this. You see how the old lady talks to me? This is what happens when people don't know their place. He turned back to Grace. Last chance. Sign the papers. Grace picked up her coffee cup, took a slow sip, and said nothing. The slap came without warning. Vince's open palm connected with her face like a thunderclap. The force spun her sideways. Her coffee cup shattered on the floor. Her glasses flew off. She tumbled from the booth and hit the ground hard, her hips screaming in pain. For a moment, everything went white. Then the world came back, the ceiling above her, the taste of blood in her mouth, the distant sound of someone gasping. She tried to push herself up. Her arms wouldn't cooperate. Vince stood over her, straightening his jacket like he'd just swatted a fly. Friday, have those papers ready. He spit near her face. Then he turned and walked out, his men following, leaving the door swinging behind them. Swear. The diner remained frozen. 30 seconds passed. A minute. Nobody moved to help her. Grace lay on the cold floor staring at the water-stained ceiling, blood dripping from her split lip onto the linoleum. She was 76 years old. She had never been hit in her life. Not by her father, not by Thomas, not by anyone. Until today. Until a room full of people watched and did nothing. Help! Her voice came out as a whisper. Please, someone. Finally, footsteps. Maya rushed from behind the counter, sliding to her knees beside Grace. Miss Grace, oh my God, Miss Grace, are you okay? My glasses. I can't see without my glasses. Maya found them under a nearby table. One lens cracked, the frame bent. She gently placed them back on Grace's face. I'm calling 911. No. Grace grabbed Maya's wrist with surprising strength. No police. Dawson works for them. He won't do anything. But you're bleeding. Just help me up, please. Just help me up. Guam. Maya lifted her slowly, carefully, guiding her back into the booth. Grace's hands shook violently. Her cheek was already swelling, already turning colors. The blood from her lip dripped onto her clean white blouse, the one she'd ironed that morning because she wanted to look nice, because she wanted to feel human. I'll get ice, Maya said. No, just sit with me. For a minute, please. Maya slid into the booth across from her, eyes wet with tears she was trying to hide. I'm so sorry, Miss Grace. I'm so sorry I didn't do anything I wanted to. I was going to, but I have a daughter, and he knows where I live. And it's not your fault, child. Grace's voice was hollow. It's nobody's fault. That's just how the world works. The strong do what they want. The weak suffer what they must. That's not true. Isn't it? Look around. Maya looked. The other diners had returned to their meals. Conversations resumed. Coffee was poured. Newspapers were read. As if nothing had happened. As if a 76-year-old woman hadn't just been assaulted in front of them. As if she was invisible. Grace reached for her purse, but her hands were shaking too badly to open it. Let me help you, Maya said. I need to pay for my coffee. Miss Grace, don't worry about the coffee. I need to pay for it. Her voice cracked. I need to do something normal. I need to pretend this is just a normal day, and I'm just paying for my coffee, and then I'm going to walk home, and nothing is going to be different. Please, let me pay for my coffee. Maya understood. She took the crumpled bills Grace managed to extract from her purse. I'll get your change. Keep it. Miss Grace, keep it, Maya. Buy your daughter something nice. Grace pushed herself to her feet, steadied herself against the table, and began the long walk to the door. Every step hurt, her hip, her cheek, her heart. Nobody looked at her. Nobody said a word. The walk home took over an hour. She had to stop 7 times. By the end, she was practically crawling. When she finally reached her front porch, she collapsed onto the old wooden swing Thomas had built 30 years ago. The chains creaked. The sun blazed overhead. And Grace Ellen Hartley, 76 years old widow, alone finally let herself cry. She cried for Thomas. She cried for Ryder. She cried for the life she'd had and the life she'd lost. She cried for the humiliation of being struck like an animal in front of people who could have helped and didn't. But mostly she cried because she knew it wasn't over. Friday was coming, and she had no one to protect her. Back at the diner, Maya couldn't stop shaking. She'd served Vince Baroni his coffee dozens of times. She'd smiled at him, laughed at his bad jokes, pretended she didn't notice when his eyes lingered too long. Because she had a daughter, because she had rent, because survival meant swallowing your pride and your principles and your dignity every single day. But watching that old woman hit the floor, something broke inside Maya, something that couldn't be fixed by looking the other way. She checked her phone. She'd done something, and in the moment while everyone was frozen, while Vince was walking toward Grace's table, she'd done something. She'd hit record. Now staring at the video on her screen, watching the slap in horrifying clarity, hearing the sound of Grace's body hitting the floor, she knew she had a choice. Do nothing like everyone else. Stay safe, stay employed, stay invisible, or do something. Something dangerous. Something that might cost her everything. Her thumb hovered over the delete button. She thought about her daughter. Then she thought about Miss Grace lying on that floor asking for help, getting nothing but silence. Maya didn't delete the video. Instead, she opened a new tab and typed 3 words into the search bar. Ryder Hawk Hartley, twat. 400 miles away in a garage in Colorado Springs, a man named Ryder was doing what he did every day, pretending to be someone else. He went by Jake now, Jake Morrison. A quiet mechanic who fixed motorcycles, paid his taxes, and spoke to nobody about his past. He had a small apartment above the shop. He had a cat named Diesel who'd wandered in 3 years ago and never left. He had a routine that kept him sane. And he had a phone he checked every night hoping for a postcard notification that never came. He hadn't seen his mother in 8 years, hadn't hugged her in 12, hadn't told her he loved her since, God, he couldn't remember. The Hells Angels patch on his chest was buried in a box in his closet. The tattoos on his arms were covered by long sleeves. The reputation he'd built, Hawk the Enforcer, the nightmare, the man who walked through violence like other men walked through rain that was supposed to be dead. He was supposed to be dead. That was the deal he'd made with himself after Tucson, after the blood, after the look in that man's eyes when Ryder's fist wouldn't stop. He'd nearly killed someone. Would have killed him if the others hadn't pulled him off. That was the night Ryder realized he'd become something monstrous. And the only way to kill the monster was to disappear. So he did. The phone rang at 9:47 p.m. Ryder stared at it. Unknown number. Arizona area code. Nobody from Arizona had his number. Nobody from anywhere had his number except his parole officer and his landlord. He let it ring and ring and ring. Finally, against every instinct, he answered. Yeah. The voice on the other end was young, female, shaking. Is this Ryder Hartley? They called you Hawk. His blood went cold. Who is this? My name is Maya Reyes. I work at a diner in Copper Ridge, Arizona. I know your mother. Ryder closed his eyes. What happened? She's okay. I mean, she's alive. But there's a man. His name is Vince Baroni. He's trying to take her land. Today he came into the diner and Mr. Hartley, he hit her. He slapped her across the face in front of 40 people and nobody did anything. She fell on the floor and she was bleeding and nobody helped her except me. Ryder's hand tightened on the phone until the plastic creaked. He hit her. Yes. A man hit my mother. I have video. I recorded the whole thing. I didn't know what else to do. I found your name in some old articles and I kept searching until I found a mechanic shop in Colorado and I had to call. She doesn't know I'm calling. She told me not to get the police because they work for the same man. But I thought maybe you could, what's his name again? Vince Baroni. Ryder burned the name into his memory. And he works for someone named Dominic Crane, big developer from Vegas. They're trying to build a resort. Your mother won't sell. So he hit a 76-year-old woman to make her cooperate. Yes. Dude. Ryder stood in his garage, phone pressed to his ear, and felt something he hadn't felt in 8 years. The monster was waking up. It started in his chest, a heat, a pressure, a rage that had no words. It spread to his arms, making his muscles twitch. It crawled up his spine and wrapped around his brain like a fist. He'd spent 8 years running from this feeling. 8 years of therapy, meditation, routine. 8 years of telling himself he was better now. Different. Reformed, but the monster wasn't dead. It was just sleeping. And now someone had made the mistake of touching his mother. Maya. Yes. You did the right thing calling me. What are you going to do? Ryder walked to his closet, pulled down the dusty box, lifted the lid. The Hells Angels patch stared back at him, the leather vest, the old photos, a life he tried to bury. I'm coming home. Yeah. He made one more call that night, a number he hadn't dialed in 8 years, a number he wasn't sure still worked. It rang twice. Hello. The voice was older now, rougher but unmistakable. Iron Jack McAllister. Chapter president. The man who'd given Ryder his patch. The man who'd pulled him off that body in Tucson. Jack, it's Hawk. Silence on the line. Then Jesus Christ, I thought you were dead. I was, but someone woke me up. What happened? Ryder told him. All of it. The diner, the slap, the blood on his mother's face, the 40 people who did nothing. When he finished, Jack was quiet for a long moment. Where do you need us? Copper Ridge, Arizona. Friday. As many as can make it. What's the play? Ryder looked at his reflection in the dusty mirror. The man staring back wasn't Jake Morrison, quiet mechanic. It was Hawk, the enforcer, the nightmare. I don't know yet, but when I figure it out, I want witnesses. You got it, brother. Ride safe. Ride safe. That night, Grace Hartley sat in her dark living room, holding an ice pack to her face and staring at the photo on the mantel. Ryder at 12, grinning, holding a fish he'd caught at Red Canyon Lake. Ryder at 18, sullen leather jacket already on his shoulders. Ryder at 25, Hell's Angels patch on his chest, eyes hard, unrecognizable. That was the last photo she had of him. The last time he'd stood still long enough for a camera. "Where are you, son?" she whispered. "Where are you?" 400 miles away in a garage in Colorado Springs, her son was pulling on a leather vest for the first time in 8 years. The monster was awake, and the monster was coming home. The engine roared to life at 4:17 a.m. Ryder hadn't slept, hadn't even tried. He'd spent the night packing, not clothes, not toiletries, but the things that mattered. The vest, the patch, the old leather gloves that still smelled like highway and gasoline. And the photo he kept in his wallet, creased and faded, his mother holding him at age 5. Both of them smiling like the world wasn't a cruel and vicious place. He strapped the saddlebag to his Harley, looked back at the garage one last time, and said goodbye to Jake Morrison. That man was dead now, buried the moment Maya's voice cracked through the phone. Hawk was back. The first 100 miles passed in darkness. Cold desert air slapped his face, numbing his cheeks, clearing his mind. He pushed the bike hard, weaving through the empty highways of southern Colorado, crossing into New Mexico before the sun cracked the horizon. His phone buzzed in his jacket. He pulled over, checked the screen. Iron Jack, 12 brothers confirmed. More coming. ETA Friday noon. Where do we meet? Ryder typed back. I'll let you know. Stay ghost until then. He pocketed the phone and stared at the sunrise bleeding orange across the desert. Somewhere out there, 400 miles south, his mother was waking up with a bruised face and a broken spirit. And somewhere in Copper Ridge, a man named Vince Baroni was drinking his morning coffee, thinking he'd won. He had no idea what was coming. Ryder kicked the bike back to life and rode toward the sun. The memories came whether he wanted them or not. That was the thing about long rides. The road gave you too much time to think, too much time to remember. He was 12 when his father first took him fishing at Red Canyon Lake. Thomas Hartley, calloused hands and gentle voice, teaching him how to bait a hook, how to wait, how to be patient. Life's like fishing, son. You can't force the good things. You gotta sit still and let them come to you. Ryder had laughed. That's boring, Dad. Maybe, but boring keeps you alive. Thomas was wrong about that. Boring didn't keep him alive. A faulty safety valve at the copper processing plant kept him dead at 53, buried under a mountain of molten metal while his wife screamed his name from the parking lot. Ryder was 24 when it happened, already patched, already riding, already too far gone to come back for more than the funeral. He remembered his mother's face that day, not crying, just empty, like someone had scooped out everything that made her human and left only a shell. "Stay," she'd whispered. "Please, Ryder, I can't do this alone. I can't, Ma. The club needs me. I need you." He'd left anyway, rode out of Copper Ridge before they finished lowering the casket, told himself he'd come back when things settled down, when he got his head straight, when the road stopped calling. 18 years later, he was still making excuses, but not anymore. He crossed into Arizona at 2:34 p.m., stopping only for Goss and bitter truck stop coffee. His body ached, his eyes burned, but every time he thought about resting, he saw his mother's face hitting that diner floor, and the monster growled louder. His phone rang. Unknown number. Arizona area code. "Yeah, Mr. Hartley," Maya's voice thin and scared. "It's Maya again, from the diner." "What happened?" "They came to her house last night, Vince's men. They spray painted her fence. They slashed her tires, and Maya's voice broke. "They killed her cat, left it on her doorstep." Ryder pulled the bike to the shoulder. His vision went red at the edges. They killed her cat. Whiskers. She's had him for 11 years, since right after Mr. Hartley died. He was all she had. Ryder's hand trembled on the handlebar, not from fear, from rage. "Is she okay?" "She won't come out of her house. She won't answer the door. I brought her groceries this morning and she looked at me through the window and shook her head. I think she's given up Mr. Hartley. I think she's ready to sign those papers just to make it stop." "She won't sign anything." "How do you know?" "Because I'll be there before Friday." Silence on the line. Then, how far are you? 6 hours. Maybe less if I push it. Mr. Hartley, Ryder, what are you going to do when you get here? He stared at the highway stretching endlessly toward the horizon. Whatever I have to. He hung up before she could respond. Grace hadn't moved from the kitchen table in 16 hours. The curtains were drawn. The lights were off. The only sound was the tick of the old grandfather clock Thomas had bought for their 20th anniversary. Whiskers was buried in the backyard now. She'd dug the grave herself despite her aching hip, despite her swollen face. She'd wrapped him in his favorite blanket, the one he always slept on at the foot of her bed, and lowered him into the earth with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. 11 years. 11 years of purring and warmth, and someone to talk to when the silence got too heavy. Gone, because she wouldn't sign a piece of paper. The contract sat on the table in front of her. $60,000, a ticket out of this nightmare. All she had to do was write her name. Her hand reached for the pen, then stopped. Thomas's voice echoed in her mind clear as the day he'd said it. This land is our legacy, Gracie. Promise me you'll never let anyone take it. I promise, she'd told him. I promise. She pulled her hand back. The pen stayed where it was, but so did the fear. 3 miles away, Vince Baroni was celebrating. She's breaking, he told Dominic Crane over the phone. I give it 2 more days tops. Old lady's got nobody. No family, no friends, no cavalry riding to the rescue. She'll sign. Crane's voice was cold and measured. She better. The investors are getting impatient. If we don't break ground by the end of the month, we will, trust me. I don't trust anyone, Vince. That's why I'm successful. Just get it done. The line went dead. Vince leaned back in his chair, sipping whiskey, watching the sunset paint the desert red. He thought about the old woman's face when he'd hit her. The shock, the fear, the absolute helplessness. It felt good. That was the thing people didn't understand about power. It wasn't about money. It wasn't about property. It was about that moment, that pure, beautiful moment, when another human being realized they were completely at your mercy. He'd felt it 100 times, and it never got old. His phone buzzed. Text from one of his men. Job done. Cat's dead. House is marked. She's not coming out. Vince smiled and poured himself another drink. Friday couldn't come soon enough. Ryder arrived in Copper Ridge at 9:47 p.m. He didn't go to his mother's house. Not yet. He needed to see the town first. Needed to understand what he was walking into. Main Street was dead. A few lights flickered in apartment windows. The dusty spoon was closed chairs stacked on tables visible through the grimy windows. Everything looked smaller than he remembered. Shabbier. Like the town itself was slowly dying. He parked the bike behind the old hardware store and walked the streets like a ghost. Past the barbershop where his father used to get his hair cut every second Saturday. Past the church where he'd been baptized at 3 months old. Past the empty lot where the movie theater used to stand before it burned down in '94. Nothing had changed. Everything had changed. He made his way to the edge of town to the little adobe house with the red tile roof. His childhood home. The place where he'd learned to walk, to talk, to dream before the dreams turned dark. The fence was covered in spray paint. Leave or die. The tires on his mother's old Buick were slashed flat. And on the porch, barely visible in the moonlight, a small mound of dirt marked with a wooden cross. Whiskers. Ryder stood there for a long time staring at that tiny grave. Then he walked up the porch steps and knocked on the door. No answer. Ma, it's me. It's Ryder. Silence. Ma, I know you're in there. I can see the light under the door. Please, open up. Nothing. He pressed his forehead against the wood, closed his eyes. I'm sorry, Ma. I'm sorry I left. I'm sorry I stayed away. I'm sorry about Dad, about Whiskers, about everything. But I'm here now, and I'm not leaving until you open this door. A minute passed, 2, 3, then slowly the deadbolt clicked. The door opened 6 inches held by a chain lock. Through the gap he saw her face bruised, swollen eyes red from crying. Ryder, yeah, Ma, it's me. You came. I came. She closed the door. He heard the chain slide free. Then the door opened fully, and there she was. 76 years old. Barely 5 feet tall, The strongest woman he'd ever known, looking like she'd been broken into 1,000 pieces. "Oh, baby," she whispered. "Oh, my baby boy." She fell into his arms, and for the first time in 8 years, Ryder held his mother. She felt so small, so fragile, like he could crush her without trying. "I've got you, Ma. I've got you. Nobody's going to hurt you again." She sobbed against his chest, her thin fingers clutching his leather vest. "They killed Whiskers Ryder. They killed my cat. He was just a cat. He never hurt anyone. He just wanted to sleep in the sun and chase butterflies." "Why would they do that?" Waikouaui. Ryder didn't have an answer. He just held her tighter. "I'm scared," she admitted, voice barely a whisper. "I've never been this scared in my life. Not even when your father died. At least then I knew it was over. This just keeps going. Every day something new, something worse." "It ends now, Ma." "How they own the sheriff. They own the town. They own everything. They don't own me." She pulled back, looked up at him with wet eyes. "What are you going to do, whatever I have to?" "Ryder, I didn't call you here for violence. I didn't call you at all. That girl Maya, I know, she did the right thing. I don't want you getting hurt. I don't want you going back to that life." He cupped her face gently, careful of the bruises. "Ma, listen to me. That life never left. I tried to bury it, tried to run from it. But the moment I heard what they did to you, I knew. The man I pretended to be, he was never real. This is who I am, who I've always been. And right now, that's exactly what you need. What if something happens to you? Then at least I'll go down protecting the person who matters most." She started crying again. He held her until the sobs faded. "Come on," he said finally. "Let's get you some tea, and then you're going to tell me everything about Vince Baroni." They talked until 3 a.m. Grace told him everything. The first offer 6 months ago, polite but firm. The second offer, less polite. The third delivered with veiled threats. Then the escalation, the dead animals left on porches throughout the neighborhood, the barn fires, the accidents that befell anyone who refused to sell. 8 families had given in already. Only 3 holdouts remained: Grace, old Edgar Finley, who owned the hardware store and the land behind it, and Rosa Mendoza, the church widow who'd rather die than sell the plot where her husband was buried. "They're saving us for last," Grace said, "breaking us one by one. Who else knows about the video, the one Maya recorded?" "Nobody. She was too scared to share it. Said if Vince found out, he'd come after her daughter." "Smart girl. We'll use it when the time is right." "Use it how?" Ryder leaned back, rubbed his eyes. "The old way won't work anymore, Ma. I can't just ride in and start breaking bones. That's what they expect. That's what they want. It gives them an excuse to call in the state police, paint us as the bad guys. So what do? We make them show their true colors in front of witnesses, in front of cameras, and then we let the world judge. And if that doesn't work," Ryder's jaw tightened, "then we do it the old way after all." Dawn broke over Copper Ridge, painting the desert in shades of gold and crimson. Ryder stood on his mother's porch, coffee in hand, watching the sun rise over the mountains his father used to love. Somewhere out there, 12 Hell's Angels were riding toward this forgotten town. More would follow. By Friday, there would be enough leather and chrome to shake the foundations of everything Vince Baroni had built. His phone buzzed. Text from Iron Jack. "Crossed into Arizona an hour ago. Got company. Duchess, Preacher, Diesel, others you don't know. All ready, all loyal." "What's the play?" Ryder typed back. "Meet at the old gas station on Route 66, 5 miles east of town. Tonight, 9 p.m. Come quiet." He pocketed the phone and heard the door open behind him. Grace stepped onto the porch, wrapped in a shawl, still moving carefully because of her hip. "You were up early." "Couldn't sleep." She stood beside him, looking at the same sunrise. "Your father loved this view. Every morning, rain or shine, he'd stand right here with his coffee. Said it reminded him that the world was still beautiful even when life was hard." "I remember." "Do you?" She looked at him. "You left so fast after the funeral. I wasn't sure what you remembered." Ryder was quiet for a long moment. "I remember everything, Ma. That's the problem. I remember every word I should have said, Every visit I should have made, every birthday I missed, I couldn't face it. Coming back here meant facing what I'd become. And I wasn't ready for that. Are you ready now? I don't have a choice. You always have a choice, Ryder. Not this time. This time someone put their hands on you. And there's only one answer for that. Grace reached over and took his hand. I spent 18 years praying for you, you know. Every single night, praying you were safe, praying you'd find peace, praying you'd come home. Guess your prayers worked. Did they, or did Yipaz come back to fight another war? Ryder turned to face her. Ma, I'm not going to lie to you. Part of me came back for you, to protect you, to make sure nobody ever touches you again. But part of me, he paused, searching for the right words. Part of me came back because I need this. I need to know I can still do something good, even if it's with the same hands that did so much bad. You're not a bad person, Ryder. I've done bad things. So has everyone. That's not what defines you. Then what does, she squeezed his hand, what you do next? That evening, Ryder rode out to the old gas station. It sat abandoned on the edge of Route 66, rusted pumps, standing like tombstones in the fading light. He killed his engine and waited in the silence. At 9:07 p.m., he heard them coming. A rumble in the distance, growing louder until the desert itself seemed to vibrate with the sound of Harley engines. They came out of the darkness like ghosts, 12 bikes, 12 riders, leather and chrome and faces carved from hard years and harder roads. Iron Jack pulled up first. He was older now, 62, gray-beard skin like worn leather, but his eyes were the same. Sharp, knowing. The eyes of a man who'd seen everything and survived it all. Hawk. He killed his engine, swung off the bike. Damn, brother, you look like hell. Feel like it too. They embraced the hard, brief hug of men who didn't know how to show emotion any other way. You remember Duchess? Jack nodded toward a woman dismounting behind him. 45 muscular military bearing. And Preacher, and there's Diesel, the kid from Oakland I told you about. Ryder nodded to each of them. You all know why we're here. Your ma, Duchess said. Some piece of garbage put hands on her. That's right. So what's the play? This from Diesel, young and eager. We ride in, break. Some skulls ride out. No. Ryder shook his head. That's what they want. They've got the sheriff in their pocket. We go in guns blazing, we're the bad guys. We lose. So we just let them get away with it. Diesel's voice rose. Some rich suit hits an old lady, and we do nothing. I didn't say that. Ryder's voice went cold. I said we don't play their game, we play ours. Which is, Ryder looked around at the faces of his brothers. Men and women who'd answered a call they didn't have to answer, who'd ridden hundreds of miles for a mother they'd never met. We make them expose themselves. There's a video, the slap, the assault, everything. We get it out. We get the press involved. We put so much pressure on them that they have to respond, and when they respond, they'll make mistakes. That's when we strike. And if they don't make mistakes, Ryder's jaw tightened. They will. Men like Vince Baroni, they're not used to being challenged. First sign of real pressure, they crack. And when he cracks, we'll be there. Preacher stepped forward. 62 years old former pastor still carrying a Bible in his saddlebag. What about the law, the real law, I mean? Feds. Working on it. The guy behind all this Dominic Crane, he's into dirty money. Money laundering, bribery, probably worse. We get enough evidence the feds will have to act. And if they don't, Ryder looked at him, then we handle it ourselves, the way we've always handled things. Silence fell over the group. Everyone understood what that meant. Everyone knew the risks. Finally, Iron Jack spoke. Whatever you need, brother, we're here, all of us, until the end. Ryder nodded. Tomorrow we ride into town, quiet, respectful, no trouble. We set up camp at my mother's property. We show the town we're not the monsters the media makes us out to be. And then we wait for Vince Baroni to make his move. The bikers dispersed into the night, finding spots to camp until morning. Ryder stayed behind, staring at the empty highway. His phone buzzed. Maya. Mr. Hartley, I just heard something. Vince is planning something for Thursday night. I overheard one of his guys talking at the bar. They mentioned your mother's house. Something about finishing the joke. Ryder's blood went cold. What exactly did they say? Just that. Thursday night, we finish the job. Make sure the old lady knows we're serious. I don't know what it means, but I know what it means. He hung up and walked back to Iron Jack. Change of plans. We don't wait for Friday. They're coming for her Thursday night. How do you know? I know. Jack studied his face. What do you want to do? Ryder looked toward Copper Ridge, invisible in the darkness, but burning in his mind. We let them come, and we make sure the whole world is watching when they do. Back in town, Vince was making final preparations. Thursday night, he told his men, we hit the house. Not fire this time, too obvious. Just break some windows, rough up the property. Make her understand that signing is her only option. What if the son shows up? One of them asked. I heard rumors he's some kind of biker. Vince laughed. One biker against all of us. Let him come. I'd love to see what kind of man lets his mother get slapped and takes 3 days to show up. What if he's not alone? Then we call the sheriff and have them arrested for trespassing. Dawson owes me. He'll do whatever I say. The man nodded, but he didn't look convinced. Relax, Vince said. By Friday morning, the old lady signs. By Friday afternoon, Crane wires the money. By next month, we're all rich. Nothing's going to stop this. Nothing. He lifted his glass. To progress. His men echoed the toast. None of them noticed the shadow outside the window. Maya crouched in the darkness, recording every word on her phone. She slipped away into the night, heart pounding. She had 48 hours to help stop a massacre. And she knew exactly who to call. Maya's hands wouldn't stop shaking as she ran through the darkness toward Grace's house. The recording on her phone felt like a bomb. Every word Vince had spoken, every threat, every plan, all of it captured. Thursday night. They were coming Thursday night. That gave them less than 48 hours to prepare. She reached the property at nearly midnight, gasping for breath, and found something she didn't expect. Motorcycles. Dozens of them lined up along the fence like sleeping beasts. And gathered at around the porch, illuminated by a single yellow bulb, a group of men and women in leather who looked like they'd ridden straight out of her nightmares. She froze. One of them noticed her. A woman muscular with short dark hair and eyes that had seen too much. You lost sweetheart. I need to talk to Ryder. Mr. Hartley, please. It's urgent. The woman studied her for a long moment. Then she turned and called over her shoulder. Hawk, you got company. Ryder emerged from the house, his mother's shawl draped over his arm. He saw Maya and his expression sharpened. What happened? I recorded them, Vince and his men. They're planning something for Thursday night. They're coming here. She thrust the phone toward him. He took it, pressed play, and listened as Vince's voice filled the quiet night. Thursday night, we hit the house. Not fire this time, too obvious. Just break some windows, rough up the property. Make her understand that signing is her only option. Ryder's jaw tightened with each word. When the recording ended, he looked at Maya with something approaching respect. You got close enough to record this. I was outside the window. They didn't see me. That was dangerous. I know. Maya's voice cracked. But I couldn't just let them hurt her again. Miss Grace is the only person in this town who ever treated me like I mattered. Duchess stepped forward. Kids got guts. Kids got evidence, Ryder corrected. This changes things. He handed the phone back to Maya. Keep this safe. Don't tell anyone you have it. Not your friends, not your family, nobody. Can you do that? Yes. Thursday night, I need you somewhere public. Somewhere with witnesses. Don't be anywhere near this house when they come. What are you going to do? Ryder looked at the bikers assembled in his mother's yard. 12 riders, more coming. By Thursday, there would be enough to form a wall that Vince Barone couldn't break through. We're going to give them exactly what they want. A confrontation. But on our terms, not theirs. Maya nodded, turned to leave, then stopped. Mr. Hartley, your mother, she never stopped believing you'd come back. Every time I served her coffee, she'd look out that window toward the highway. Every single time. Like she was waiting for something. Ryder's throat tightened. I know. Don't let her down. She disappeared into the darkness. Ryder stood there for a long moment, staring at the empty space where she'd been. Then he turned to his brothers. We've got 48 hours. Let's get to work. The next morning, Copper Ridge woke up to something it had never seen before. Motorcycles lined Main Street. Leather-clad riders walked the sidewalks, nodding politely to confused shopkeepers. At the hardware store, 3 bikers purchased lumber and paint. At the grocery store, 2 more bought enough food to feed an army. And at the Dusty Spoon Diner, Iron Jack sat at the counter, ordered scrambled eggs and black coffee, and left a $50 tip. "Ma'am," he said to the stunned waitress who wasn't Maya, "you got a fine establishment here. Appreciate the hospitality." She stared at him like he'd grown a second head. Word spread fast. The Hells Angels were in town, not causing trouble, not making threats, just existing, peacefully. It didn't fit the narrative. It didn't match the stories people had heard. And that confusion was exactly what Ryder wanted. At Grace's house, the real work began. Diesel had brought tools. Preacher had brought supplies. Within hours, they were repairing the fence painting over the spray-painted threats, fixing the broken shutters that had hung crooked for years. Grace watched from the porch, coffee cup in hand, tears streaming down her face. "You don't have to do this," she told Duchess, who was hammering a new slat into place. "You don't even know me." "No, ma'am, but we know Hawk, and if he says you're worth protecting, that's good enough for us." Why would you ride all this way for a stranger?" Duchess paused, hammer in hand, and looked at Grace with something raw in her eyes. "Because someone once rode for me, years ago. I was in a bad way. Husband, dead bills piling up, about to lose everything. Hawk showed up with 3 other brothers, fixed my roof, paid my mortgage, never asked for anything in return. He never told me that. He wouldn't. That's not who he is." Duchess resumed hammering. "Your son's a hard man, Mrs. Hartley. Done hard things. But underneath all that leather and ink, he's got the biggest heart of anyone I have ever known. He just doesn't know how to show it." Grace looked across the yard to where Ryder was helping Preacher unload lumber from a truck. He caught her gaze and nodded once. A small gesture, but it said everything. "He came back," Grace whispered. "After all these years, he finally came back. Some roads take longer than others, ma'am, but the good ones always lead home." By noon, more riders had arrived. 18 now, then 24, then 30. They came from Nevada and California and Texas. They came from places Grace had never heard of, with names she couldn't pronounce. But they all wore the same patch. They all answered to the same code. And they all called her son brother. Edgar Finley was the first townsperson to approach. The hardware store owner was 80 years old, bent and weathered, but his eyes were sharp. He walked up the driveway at 2 p.m., past a wall of motorcycles and hard-faced riders, and stopped in front of Ryder. "You're the Hartley boy." "That's right. Heard what happened to your mother. Whole town heard." Edgar spat in the dirt. "Also heard nobody did a damn thing about it." "That's right, too. I was in that diner." The old man's voice cracked. "Sat 3 tables away. Watched that piece of garbage hit her. Watched her fall. And I didn't move. Didn't say a word. 80 years old and I'm still a coward." Ryder studied him. "You're here now. Doesn't make up for it." "Maybe not, but it's a start." Edgar nodded slowly. "I own the hardware store, the land behind it too. Baroni's been after me for months. I told him to go to hell, but..." He paused. "Alone, I can't hold out forever. None of us can." "You're not alone anymore." "I see that." Edgar looked around at the bikers, something like wonder in his old eyes. "My boy served in Vietnam, came back broken, said the only people who treated him like a human being were the bikers at the VA. Hells Angels, matter of fact. Bought him drinks, listened to his stories, helped him find a job. Good men come in all kinds of packages. That's what I'm learning." Edgar reached into his pocket, pulled out a wad of bills. "This ain't much, but whatever you boys need, lumber, tools, supplies, it's on the house. Least I can do." Ryder shook his head. "Keep your money, Mr. Finley. We didn't come here for charity." "Then what did you come for?" Ryder looked toward the house where his mother was laughing at something Duchess had said. Actually laughing. "For the first time in God knew how long. I came to remember what matters." At 4 p.m., Rosa Mendoza arrived. The church widow was 65, dressed in black, clutching a rosary in weathered fingers. She walked straight up to Ryder, ignoring the intimidating bikers on all sides, and grabbed his hands. "You are Grace's son." "Yes, ma'am." "She talks about you every Sunday after Mass, says you're lost but not gone, says she prays for you every night." Ryder didn't know what to say. "I brought food." Rosa gestured behind her where two young men from the church were unloading trays from an old pickup truck. "Tamales, rice, beans, enough for everyone." "That's very kind, but—" "No buts." Her grip tightened on his hands. "In my church, we feed the hungry, and your people look hungry." Ryder almost smiled. "Yes, ma'am, they probably are." "Good, then eat, and when you're done eating, come see me. I have information about Vince Baroni, things the sheriff doesn't want anyone to know." She released his hands and walked toward the house, rosary swinging. Diesel appeared at Ryder's elbow. "Did that old lady just say she has dirt on Baroni?" "She did." "Damn, this town's full of surprises." "More than you know." Sheriff Wayne Dawson showed up at 6 p.m. He came alone, which was either brave or stupid, and parked his cruiser at the edge of the property. For a long moment, he just sat there watching the bikers watch him. Then he stepped out, adjusted his belt, and walked toward the porch. Ryder met him halfway. "Sheriff." "Mr. Hartley." Dawson's voice was carefully neutral. "Got some calls from concerned citizens. Said there's an army camped out at your mother's place." "Not an army, family reunion." "That's a lot of family." "We're very close." Dawson looked around, counting motorcycles. His face was unreadable, but his hands were shaking slightly. "I'm going to have to ask what your intentions are." "Our intentions are to visit my mother, fix up her property, and enjoy the beautiful Arizona weather." "That's all?" "That's all. And when you're done visiting, you'll leave peacefully." Ryder stepped closer, close enough to see the sweat beading on Dawson's forehead. "Sheriff, let me ask you something. You were in that diner, weren't you? When Vince Baroni hit my mother?" Dawson's jaw tightened. "I wasn't on duty." "But you were there, eating your breakfast, watching a 76-year-old woman get slapped to the ground. And you did nothing." "That's not—" "I'm not finished." Ryder's voice went cold. "You work for Baroni. Everyone knows it. But here's what I'm wondering, is that because you want to or because you have to, because there's a difference. One makes you a criminal, the other makes you a coward. And cowards can be forgiven." Dawson was silent for a long moment. "I have a family," he finally said. "A wife, 2 daughters. Baroni made it very clear what would happen to them if I didn't cooperate." "So it's the second thing." "Yes." Ryder studied him, searching for the lie, finding none. "What do you want, Sheriff, right now, in this moment? What do you actually want?" Dawson's eyes glistened. "I want to be the man my daughters think I am. The man I was before I let fear make my choices." "Then help us." "Hal Baroni has evidence. Years of bribes, he'll destroy me. And if we destroy him first—" Dawson blinked. "What?" "You're not the only one with evidence, Sheriff. There's a video of the assault. There's a recording of Baroni planning another attack. And there's a paper trail leading straight to Dominic Crane's money laundering operation. We're building a case, a real case, the kind that brings in the feds." "How do you know about—" "Doesn't matter how I know. What matters is whether you want to be on the right side when the hammer falls. Because it is falling, Sheriff. Thursday night, one way or another." Dawson stood very still, processing, calculating. "What do you need from me? When Baroni's men show up, Thursday, don't interfere. Don't arrest us. Don't help them. Just stay home. Watch TV. Be somewhere else. And if I do that, if I stay out of it, what happens to me after? That depends on whether you're willing to testify against Baroni when the time comes. He'll kill me. He'll be in prison, along with Dominic Crane and everyone else who's been terrorizing this town." Dawson took a shaky breath. "I need to think about it." "You've got 48 hours, same as the rest of us." The sheriff walked back to his cruiser, shoulders slumped, a man carrying the weight of too many wrong choices. Ryder watched him go, then turned to find Iron Jack standing behind him. "Think he'll flip?" "Maybe. Fear's a powerful motivator. He's just got to figure out who he's more afraid of, Baroni or us." "I vote us." "So do I." That night, Ryder sat with his mother on the porch while the bikers ate Rose's tamales and swapped stories around a campfire. "This is nice," Grace said softly, "having people here, hearing laughter. When's the last time you had company? Real company, not counting Maya or the mailman." She thought about it. "Maybe 5 years, maybe more. After your father died, people stopped coming around. I think they didn't know what to say. Then they just forgot I existed." "I forgot too." "No, you didn't. You sent postcards." "Postcards aren't the same as being here." "No, they're not." She reached over and took his hand. "But I understood, Ryder. I always understood. The life you were living, it wasn't something you could bring home. And you were protecting me by staying away." "I was protecting myself." "Maybe, but that's okay too. We all do what we have to do to survive." Ryder stared at the fire, watching the sparks drift up toward the stars. "I killed someone, Ma. Almost killed them. In Tucson, 8 years ago. Beat a man so badly they didn't think he'd walk again." Grace was silent. "He lived. Barely. But when I saw what I'd done, when I saw what I was capable of," he trailed off. "That's why I left. That's why I stayed away. I didn't want you to know who I really was." "Who are you really, Ryder?" He looked at her, this tiny, fierce woman who had waited 18 years for him to come home. "I don't know anymore. I thought I was the man who hurt people. Then I thought I was the man who ran away. Now," he shook his head, "now I'm just trying to be the man who protects the ones he loves." "That's enough," she squeezed his hand. "That's more than enough." They sat in silence, mother and son, while the fire crackled and the bikers laughed, and somewhere in the distance, a coyote howled at the moon. For the first time in 8 years, Ryder felt something other than anger. He felt peace. It wouldn't last. Wednesday morning brought visitors. A news van from Phoenix tipped off by an anonymous source. A reporter named Helen Chen, sharp-eyed and hungry with a cameraman in tow. "Mr. Hartley, I'm Helen Chen, Channel 5 News. I understand there was an incident involving your mother at a local diner." Ryder had expected this, had planned for it, but still the sight of a camera made something clench in his gut. "No comment." "Sir, we have footage. A video showing an elderly woman being assaulted. We've confirmed the victim is your mother and that the assailant is Vince Baroni, a local businessman connected to Las Vegas developer Dominic Crane. Would you like to comment on that?" Maya, she'd sent the video. Ryder kept his face neutral. "I think the video speaks for itself." "It does, but I'm curious about the response. There are reports of dozens of Hell's Angels camping at your mother's property. Are you planning some kind of retaliation?" "We're planning a family visit, nothing more." "Witnesses say you've been repairing her property, interacting peacefully with locals. That's not exactly the Hell's Angels' reputation." "Reputations aren't always accurate, Mr. Thune." "No, they're not." She lowered her microphone slightly, her voice dropping. "Off the record, I've been investigating Dominic Crane for 2 years. He's dirty. Money laundering, bribery, intimidation. But nobody will go on record because they're all terrified. Can't imagine why. Your mother isn't terrified, though. She refused to sell. She stood up to Baroni in front of 40 witnesses. That takes courage. She's the strongest person I know. Would she be willing to give an interview? Tell her story?" Ryder considered it. The publicity could help, could put pressure on Crane, could make it harder for Baroni to act without consequences. But it could also make her a bigger target. That's her decision to make, not mine. He found Grace in the kitchen, making coffee for the bikers. When he told her about the reporter, she was quiet for a long moment. "What do you think I should do?" "I think you've spent 18 years being invisible. Maybe it's time people saw you." "And if that makes things worse?" "Things are already worse, Ma. The only question is whether we fight back or let them win." Grace set down the coffee pot. "Tell her I'll do it, but not here. In town, at the diner, where everyone can see." "Ma, no." Her voice was firm. "If I'm going to tell my story, I'm going to tell it in the same place they tried to break me. Let them see that I'm not broken. Let everyone see." Ryder felt a swell of pride. "You sure about this?" "I've never been more sure of anything in my life." The interview aired Wednesday evening. Grace sat in the booth by the window, the same booth where she'd been attacked, and told her story. The camera captured everything, the bruise still visible on her cheek, the tremble in her hands, the steel in her eyes. "I've been a widow for 18 years, she said. "I've spent most of that time alone in a town that forgot I existed. When Mr. Barone came to me demanding I sell my land, I told him no. Not because I'm brave, but because that land is all I have left of my husband, and I will not let anyone take it from me." "What happened next?" Helen Chen asked. "He hit me, in front of everyone, knocked me to the floor, and nobody helped. Nobody said a word." "Why do you think that is?" "Fear. People are afraid of him, afraid of what he represents. But fear only works if we let it. And the Hells Angels reports say they have gathered at your property. Dozens of them. What do you say to people who are concerned about their presence?" Grace looked directly into the camera. "Those men and women rode hundreds of miles to help a stranger. They've repaired my home. They've shared meals with me. They've treated me with more kindness than this town has shown in years. They may wear leather and ride motorcycles, but they're not the monsters here. The real monster wears a suit and thinks he can slap an old woman without consequences." She paused. He was wrong. By midnight, the video had been viewed over 2 million times. Comments poured in from across the country. Support outrage promises to help. The hashtag #JusticeForGrace started trending. Donations flooded into a GoFundMe someone had set up for the Copper Ridge 3, Grace, Edgar, and Rosa. And in Las Vegas, Dominic Crane watched the news with cold fury. "This is unacceptable." Vince stood before him, sweating, trying not to shake. "It's just a local news story. It'll blow over." "Blow over." Crane stood and Vince took an involuntary step back. "My face is all over the internet. My name is being connected to assault and intimidation. Investors are calling, asking questions. The Gaming Commission is sniffing around. I can fix this." "How the damage is done?" "Not yet. If we move up the timeline, hit her tonight. Tonight you want to assault an elderly woman while the entire country is watching. We make it look like an accident, a gas leak, a kitchen fire, something that can't be traced back to us." Crane was silent for a long moment. "You're suggesting murder." "I'm suggesting we eliminate a problem, permanently." Crane walked to the window, stared out at the glittering strip. "If this goes wrong, I'll deny ever knowing you. You understand that you'll be on your own, completely." "It won't go wrong. It better not." Crane turned back, eyes like ice. "Tonight, make it clean. And Vince, if you fail me again, the next accident will be yours." Vince drove back to Copper Ridge with shaking hands. He'd threatened, he'd intimidated, he'd even hit a few people when the situation called for it. But murder, that was a line he'd never crossed. But now there was no choice. Crane had made that clear. He gathered his men at 10 p.m. Change of plans. We're not waiting for Thursday. We move tonight. Tonight, but there's gotta be 30 bikers out there. I don't care if there's 300. We go in fast, set the fire, get out. By the time anyone realizes what's happening, it'll be too late. "What about the old lady?" Vince's jaw tightened. "She's not our problem anymore." He didn't say what he meant. He didn't have to. His men understood. They loaded into 3 trucks and headed toward the edge of town. At Grace's house, Ryder's phone buzzed. "Maya, they're coming. Now, not Thursday. Now! I saw them loading trucks. They have gas cans." His blood went cold. "Jack Diesel, everybody up now!" The camp erupted into motion. 30 bikers scrambling for positions. Phones being readied. Cameras activated. "What's happening?" Grace appeared on the porch in her robe. "Ryder, what's—" "Get inside, Ma. Lock the door. Don't open it for anyone but me." "Ryder, wheel. Now, Ma." She retreated into the house. He heard the deadbolt click. Iron Jack ran up, shotgun in hand. "What do we do?" Ryder looked toward the road where headlights were already visible in the distance. "We end this. Tonight." The headlights cut through the darkness like predator eyes. 3 trucks, moving fast, no attempt to hide. Ryder counted at least 9 men, maybe more, in the truck beds. In gas cans, he could see them glinting in the moonlight. They weren't coming to intimidate anymore. They were coming to kill. "Spread out," he ordered. Diesel, take 5 men to the north side. Jack, you're with me at the gate. Preacher, get the cameras rolling. I want every second of this documented. What about weapons? Diesel asked. No guns, not unless they shoot first. We're not giving them an excuse to call us the aggressors. They're coming to burn down a house with an old lady inside, and we can't shoot. We can defend, we can restrain, but we do not fire first. Understood? Diesel didn't like it. None of them did, but they nodded and moved into position. Ryder walked to the gate, irons Jack beside him. You sure about this? Jack asked. 30 of us against 9 of them, we could end this in 2 minutes. And then what they call, the cops claim we attacked them and we all go to prison while Crane walks free. Ryder shook his head. No, we do this smart. We let them make the first move. We document everything. And then we bury them with evidence, not fists. And if they start shooting, Ryder's jaw tightened. Then God help them. The truck stopped 50 yards from the gate, engines idling, doors opening. Vince Barone stepped out first, flanked by 8 men carrying baseball bats, crowbars, and 2 visible handguns. He walked toward the gate with the swagger of a man who thought he'd already won. Well, well, his voice carried across the night air. Looks like we've got ourselves a welcoming committee. Ryder didn't move, didn't speak, just stood there blocking the gate, arms crossed. You're trespassing, Barone. Am I funny? I thought this was about to be vacant property. Turn around, leave. This is your only warning. Vince laughed. The sound was ugly hollow. Warning, you're giving me a warning. He gestured at his men. Do you see what I brought? This isn't a negotiation, biker boy. This is an eviction. Your mother had her chance. She chose wrong. Now she pays the price. She's not paying anything, and neither are you if you're smart enough to walk away. Walk away. Vince stepped closer, close enough that Ryder could smell the whiskey on his breath. I've got Dominic Crane behind me. I've got the sheriff into my pocket. I've got lawyers and accountants and politicians who owe me favors. What do you have? A bunch of old men on motorcycles playing dress-up. Ryder smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. I have cameras, 30 of them, recording every word you're saying right now. I have a reporter from Channel 5 standing by, ready to broadcast live the moment I give the signal. I have 2 million people who watched your assault on my mother and are waiting to see what happens next. But Vince's smile flickered. And I have evidence, Ryder continued, audio recordings of you planning this attack, financial records linking Crane to money laundering, testimony from Sheriff Dawson about the bribes he's been taking for years. Dawson would never. He already did. Made a full statement this afternoon in exchange for immunity. That was a lie. Dawson hadn't committed to anything yet. But Vince didn't know that, and the flash of fear in his eyes told Ryder the bluff was working. You're lying. Am I? Call him right now. Ask him where he is. Vince pulled out his phone, dialed, waited. His face went pale. He's not answering. That's because he's at the FBI field office in Phoenix handing over everything he knows about your operation. Another lie, but a convincing one. Vince's hand started to shake. This doesn't change anything. Crane is done. The feds have been building a case against him for 2 years. They were just waiting for someone to flip. Now they have Dawson, and by tomorrow morning they'll have you too. The only question is whether you go down for intimidation and assault or murder. Vince's men exchanged nervous glances. This wasn't what they'd signed up for. Turn around, Ryder said again, his voice steady as stone. Go home. In the morning, call a lawyer. Maybe you can cut a deal before Crane throws you under the bus. Because he will, Vince. The moment things get hot, he'll sacrifice you without a second thought. That's what men like him do. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then one of Vince's men, a younger guy, maybe mid-20s, dropped his crowbar. I'm out. What? Vince spun on him. Get back in line. No, man, this is insane. We came here to scare an old lady, not to catch federal charges. He backed toward the trucks. I'm done. I'm out. Another man dropped his bat, then another. Within 30 seconds, 5 of Vince's 8 men had retreated to the vehicles. Doors slammed, engines revved, and 3 trucks became 2, then 1, then disappeared into the night. Vince stood alone with 3 loyal thugs facing 30 bikers and a wall of cameras. His face contorted with rage. You think you've won? You think this is over? It's over, Vince. No. He pulled a gun from his waistband, and suddenly everything changed. The bikers tensed. Ryder held up a hand, keeping them in place. Put it down, Baroni. I'm not going to prison. I'm not losing everything because some old bag wouldn't sign a piece of paper. You don't have to lose anything. Put the gun down, walk away, and maybe you can still salvage something. Shut up! Vince's hand was shaking violently now, the gun wavering between Ryder and the house. Where is she? Where's the old woman? She's inside, protected. And if you take one step toward that door, you'll be dead before you reach the porch. I'll shoot you. Then my brothers will kill you, and you'll die knowing you failed. Is that what you want? Is that how you want this to end? Tears were streaming down Vince's face now. The tears of a man who'd built his entire identity on power and fear, watching it crumble in real time. I just wanted to matter, he whispered. I just wanted to be somebody. Then be somebody now. Make the right choice. Put down the gun. For an agonizing moment, the standoff held. Then slowly, Vince's arm dropped. The gun clattered to the ground, and Vince Baroni collapsed to his knees, sobbing like a child. Iron Jack moved forward, kicked the gun away, and zip-tied Vince's hands behind his back. It's over, Ryder said quietly. Get him out of here. They were loading Vince into one of the remaining trucks when a different engine roared in the distance. Everyone froze, hands moving to weapons. But it wasn't an attack, it was a convoy. 12 more motorcycles came roaring out of the darkness, headlights blazing. They pulled off to the gate, and the lead rider, a massive man with a beard that reached his chest, killed his engine and dismounted. Heard there was trouble in Arizona. Thought you might need backup. Ryder stared at him. Mongo, I thought you were in Oregon. I was. Got the call, started writing. Mongo looked around at the assembled bikers, at the crying man in zip ties, at the cameras still recording. Looks like we missed the party. Party's just getting started. Ryder pulled out his phone and dialed. Helen, it's Hartley. You're going to want to get down here now and bring the cameras. Inside the house, Grace sat in the dark listening. She'd heard everything through the thin walls. The shouting, the threats, the sound of her son facing down a man with a gun. Every instinct had told her to run out there, to stand beside him, to show Vince Baroni that he hadn't broken her and never would. But Ryder had told her to stay inside, and for once she'd listened. Now, as the sounds of confrontation faded into the murmur of victory, she allowed herself to breathe. The front door opened. Ma! She stood up, crossed the room, and threw her arms around her son. I thought he was going to shoot you. I heard the gun, and I thought, I'm okay, Ma, everyone's okay. You could have died, but I didn't. Ryder, Ma. He pulled back, cupped her face in his scarred hands. It's over. Vince is in custody, his men scattered. The cameras got everything. By tomorrow, this will be national news. And Crane, the man behind all of this, he's next. The feds are already involved. It's just a matter of time. Grace searched his face, looking for the lie, finding none. You really did it. You really stopped them. We did it. All of us. The club, the town, Maya, Rosa, Edgar, everyone who refused to be afraid. I was afraid. I know. So was I. You didn't look afraid. Ryder almost smiled. That's the trick, Ma. You never let them see it. The next 48 hours were chaos. Helen Chen's live broadcast from Grace's property went viral within hours. The footage of Vince's breakdown, his confession on camera, his arrest by bikers who refused to resort to violence, it captured something people desperately wanted to believe in. Good triumphing over evil. Courage triumphing over fear. A 76-year-old widow standing firm while men with money and power crumbled before her. The hashtag Justice for Grace exploded across social media. Politicians who'd never heard of Copper Ridge suddenly issued statements condemning those who prey on the vulnerable. News crews from around the country descended on the tiny town, turning Main Street into a forest of cameras and satellite trucks. And in Phoenix, the FBI field office was working overtime. Agent Rebecca Stone had been investigating Dominic Crane for 3 years. 3 years of dead ends, scared witnesses, and evidence that evaporated whenever she got close. But now, with Vince Baroni offering to testify in exchange for a reduced sentence, the case was finally coming together. She reviewed the recordings Maya had provided. The financial documents Diesel had somehow obtained, she didn't ask how. The sworn statement from Sheriff Wayne Dawson, who'd walked into her office at 6 a.m., hands shaking, and said, "I want to do the right thing." Finally. By Thursday afternoon, she had enough for an arrest warrant. Dominic Crane was taken into custody at 7:47 p.m., surrounded by federal agents, while cameras captured every second. He said nothing as they led him to the waiting SUV. His face was a mask of cold fury, but his eyes betrayed the truth. He knew it was over. Ryder watched the arrest on the tiny television in his mother's living room. Grace sat beside him, clutching his hand. Duchess and Jack and a dozen other bikers crowded in behind them. "That's it," Maya whispered from the doorway. "They got him." "They got him," Ryder agreed. "So what happens now?" Ryder looked at his mother. "Now we breathe." But not everyone was celebrating. Edgar Finley knocked on the door at 9 p.m., hat in hand, eyes wet. "Mrs. Hartley, Ryder, I need to say something." Grace gestured him inside. "What is it, Edgar?" The old man stood in the middle of the room, surrounded by bikers, looking smaller than Ryder had ever seen him. "I was in that diner. When he hit you, I was 3 tables away, and I didn't do anything. I sat there like a coward while you bled on the floor." "Edgar, let me finish, please." His voice cracked. "I've been a coward my whole life. When my boy came back from Vietnam, broken and lost, I didn't know how to help him. When my wife got sick, I pretended everything was fine until she was gone. And when you needed anyone to stand up, I looked at my eggs and kept eating." Tears rolled down his weathered cheeks. "I'm sorry, Grace. I'm so goddamn sorry." Grace rose from the couch and walked to him. She took his hands in hers. "Edgar, look at me." He looked. "What matters isn't that you sat there. What matters is that you're standing here now. You brought supplies. You offered help. You chose to be brave when it counted. It doesn't make up for... Maybe not, but it's a start." She squeezed his hands. "Forgiveness isn't about erasing the past. It's about choosing to move forward. And I choose to move forward with you, Edgar. With all of you." The old man broke down, completely sobbing like a child. And one by one, the other townspeople who'd been present that day began to appear at Grace's door. The trucker, who'd stared at his coffee. The young mother who'd grabbed her children and fled. The retired teacher who'd looked away. They came with apologies and casseroles and shame that had been eating them alive for days, and Grace welcomed each one. "We're all afraid sometimes," she told them. "Fear doesn't make you evil. It makes you human. What matters is what you do with that fear." Rosa Mendoza arrived at midnight with an entire church group bearing candles. "We're holding a vigil," she announced, "for healing, for forgiveness, for the soul of this town." The candles spread across Grace's yard, dozens of small flames pushing back the darkness. Townspeople and bikers stood side by side, some praying, some just standing in silent solidarity. Ryder watched from the porch, Duchess beside him. "Never thought I'd see Hell's Angels at a prayer vigil," she murmured. "Never thought I'd be back in Arizona." "You going to stay?" He was quiet for a long moment. "I don't know. Part of me wants to. Part of me still feels the road calling." "The road'll always be there, so will the club. Question is whether you'll regret leaving again." "I regretted it every day for 8 years." "Then maybe you've got your answer." Before he could respond, his phone buzzed. Unknown number. DC area code. "This is Hartley." "Mr. Hartley, this is Agent Rebecca Stone, FBI. I wanted to thank you personally for your assistance in the Crane investigation." "Just protected my mother. Nothing special." "On the contrary, it was quite special. We've been trying to build a case against Crane for years. Without your intervention, without the media pressure, without Vince Baroni's breakdown." She paused. "Let's just say justice would have remained blind a while longer." "What happens now?" "Crane is being held without bail. Baroni is cooperating fully in exchange for a reduced sentence. We've frozen all development on the Red Canyon project, and we're looking into every property purchase Crane has made in the past decade. So it's really over. The legal process will take time. But yes, for Copper Ridge, it's over. Your mother can stay on her land. So can Edgar Finley and Rosa Mendoza." Ryder felt something loosen in his chest, a weight he'd been carrying for days, for years. "Thank you, Agent Stone. Thank you, Mr. Hartley. Your mother is lucky to have a son like you. She hung up. Ryder stared at the phone. Lucky. He'd never felt lucky. He'd felt guilty, angry, lost. But standing here watching candles flicker across his mother's yard surrounded by brothers who'd ridden across state lines to help a stranger, maybe luck wasn't about what happened to you. Maybe it was about who stood beside you when the darkness came. The vigil lasted until dawn. As the sun rose over the mountains, the candles burned low and the crowd began to disperse. Townspeople hugged bikers. Bikers shook hands with church members. Barriers that had seemed insurmountable the day before dissolved like morning mist. Grace stood on her porch watching it all. This isn't the town I remember, she said softly. No, Ryder agreed. It's better. Is it, or are people just responding to the cameras and the attention? Does it matter the cameras will leave? The attention will fade. But what happened here, the standing together, the choosing courage that changes people? I've seen it before. When in the club, you don't become a brother by wearing a patch. You become a brother by bleeding together, by choosing each other when it's hard. He looked at her. That's what happened here. This town bled together, and now they're family. Grace considered this. You've learned a lot on that road of yours. Some things, not enough. Enough to come home. The question hung in the air. Before Ryder could answer, Maya appeared at the gate, her 4-year-old daughter clinging to her leg. Miss Grace Ryder, I wanted to introduce someone. The little girl looked up at the bikers with wide, curious eyes. No fear, just wonder. This is Lily. She wanted to meet the angels. Angels, Ryder raised an eyebrow. That's what I told her, that angels came to help Grandma Grace. Lily studied Ryder with the intense scrutiny only children possess. You don't look like an angel. You're all scratchy. Ryder almost laughed. That's because I'm a different kind of angel, the kind that rides motorcycles. Can I ride one? Maybe when you're older. Promise, Ryder looked at Maya, who nodded. Promise. Lily grinned and ran off to examine the motorcycles more closely. Maya watched her go, then turned to Ryder. Thank you for everything. This town would have died if you hadn't come. You're the one who called me. You're the one who recorded Vince. You're the hero here, Maya. I'm not a hero. I'm just a waitress. Heroes don't wear capes. They wear aprons and take risks because someone they love is in danger. Maya's eyes welled with tears. Miss Grace is like a grandmother to me. The grandmother I never had. Then take care of her when I'm not here. You're leaving. Ryder looked at his mother still standing on the porch watching the sunrise. I don't know yet, but if I do, I need to know she's not alone. She won't be, I promise. That afternoon, Sheriff Wayne Dawson turned himself in. He walked into the FBI field office with his badge and his gun and a written confession detailing every bribe he'd taken, every crime he'd overlooked, every moment he'd chosen fear over duty. He faced up to 15 years in federal prison. But when agents asked him why he'd come forward, his answer was simple. Because a 76-year-old widow was braver than I've ever been, and I couldn't live with the shame anymore. The story made national news, another piece of the puzzle falling into place, another domino in the chain that would eventually bury Dominic Crane for decades. But for Ryder, the real moment came that evening. He found Vince Baroni in the county jail awaiting transfer to federal custody. He had to call in Favors' flash credentials he shouldn't still have, but eventually he was standing outside the cell, the man who'd slapped his mother to the ground. Vince looked up. His face was pale. His eyes were dead. Came to gloat. No. Then why? Ryder was silent for a long moment. I came to understand. Understand why you did it, why you became this. Vince laughed bitterly. You want my sad backstory? Daddy didn't love me. Mommy drank too much. Save it. I don't need your pity. I'm not offering pity. I'm offering, I don't know, maybe recognition. Recognition of what? Ryder leaned against the bars. I've been you, Vince. Not exactly, but close enough. I've hurt people because I was angry. I've used my fist to feel powerful when everything else felt out of control. I've done things that wake me up at night, sweating, wondering how I became that person. Vince was listening now, actually listening. The difference is I stopped. I ran away, which maybe wasn't the bravest choice, but it broke the cycle. You kept going. You kept hurting people, and eventually you hurt someone who had a son willing to burn the world down to protect her. So what you came here to lecture me? No, I came here to tell you something. Something I wish someone had told me years ago. What? It's not too late. You are going to prison, probably for a long time. But prison ends, and when it does, you'll have a choice. The same choice everyone has, to keep being the person you were, or to become someone new. Vince stared at him. Why do you care I hit your mother? I terrorized your town. I would have killed her if you hadn't stopped me. I know. So why? Ryder considered the question. Because my mother taught me something a long time ago. She said forgiveness isn't about the person who hurt you. It's about refusing to let hate eat you alive. He stepped back from the bars. I'm not saying I forgive you. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But I'm saying the door's open if you ever decide to walk through it. He turned and walked away, leaving Vince Baroni alone with his thoughts. Behind him so quietly he almost missed it, he heard the man start to cry. 1 month passed like a slow exhale after holding your breath too long. The news trucks left first, then the reporters, then the curious tourists who'd driven hours just to see the town where a widow stood her ground. Copper Ridge returned to its quiet rhythms, coffee at the Dusty Spoon, gossip at the hardware store, church bells on Sunday morning. But something had changed, something fundamental. You could feel it in the way people greeted each other on the street, the way they made eye contact instead of looking away, the way they stopped pretending they didn't see each other. Fear had ruled this town for so long that people had forgotten what it felt like to be free of it. Now they were remembering. Ryder spent most of that month at his mother's house, doing the things sons are supposed to do, fixing the leaky faucet Thomas had never gotten around to, repainting the shutters, rebuilding the fence that Vince's men had vandalized. Simple work, honest work, the kind of work that let you think while your hands stayed busy. You're quiet today, Grace said one afternoon, bringing him lemonade on the porch. Just thinking. About what? He took the glass, drank deeply, and stared at the horizon. About what comes next. Grace sat beside him on the old wooden swing. The road's calling again, isn't it? It never stopped. Then why are you still here? Ryder was quiet for a long moment. Because I'm not sure I want to answer it this time. Grace didn't push. She'd learned in 18 years of waiting that pushing Ryder only made him run faster. Instead, she just sat with him, watching the clouds drift across the Arizona sky. Your father used to say that home isn't a place. It's a feeling. The feeling that you belong somewhere, that someone's waiting for you. I remember. Do you feel that here? Ryder looked at her, this tiny, fierce woman who had weathered more storms than anyone should have to, who had waited for him when he gave her every reason not to, who had taught him without ever saying the words what love actually meant. Yeah, Ma, I do. Then maybe that's your answer. The Dusty Spoon reopened under new management 2 weeks after Crane's arrest. Maya had scraped together every penny she had, plus a generous contribution from an anonymous donor who rode a motorcycle and had a Hells Angels tattoo, and bought the diner from the previous owner who'd been eager to sell and get out of town. She renamed it Grace's Place. You can't name it after me, Grace protested when she saw the new sign. That's ridiculous. It's my diner. I can name it whatever I want. But people will think I own it. Good. Then they'll come in hoping to meet you and I'll sell them pancakes while they wait. Grace shook her head, but she was smiling. It was the first time Maya had seen her really smile since before the slap. You're impossible. I learned from the best. The grand reopening drew half the town. Edgar Finley brought flowers. Rosa Mendoza brought a crucifix to hang behind the counter. Sheriff Dawson, former Sheriff Dawson, sent a card from the minimum security facility where he was serving his 18-month sentence. I'm sorry for everything. I hope someday I can make it right. In the meantime, please know that what happened in Copper Ridge gave me the courage to face my own demons. Thank you for showing me it's never too late to choose differently. Maya read the card aloud to the assembled crowd. Some people shifted uncomfortably. Others nodded. A few wiped their eyes. Forgiveness is hard, Maya said, but holding on to hate is harder. So today we start fresh, all of us, together. She cut the ribbon and Grace's Place officially opened for business. Ryder watched from a corner booth nursing a coffee that had gone cold an hour ago. Duchess slid in across from him. You look like a man with something on his mind. Always. Want to share? He turned the coffee cup in his hands. I visited Vince yesterday at the Federal Holding Facility. Duchess raised an eyebrow. Why? I don't know, felt like I had to, like there was something unfinished. And he's different, quieter. The swagger's gone. He asked me if I really meant what I said about the door being open, about becoming someone new. What did you tell him? I told him yes, that I've seen men worse than him turn their lives around, that it's never too late as long as you're willing to do the work. Duchess studied him. You know what I think? I think you're not talking about Vince at all. I think you're talking about yourself. Ryder met her eyes. Maybe. You've been carrying guilt for 8 years, Hawk. Guilt about Tucson. Guilt about your mother. Guilt about running Omo, you see. At some point, you have to put it down. I don't know how. Yes, you do. You just have to decide that you deserve to be happy, that you deserve to belong somewhere, that the past doesn't have to define the future. She reached across the table and squeezed his hand. You saved your mother. You saved this town. Maybe it's time to save yourself. The community center groundbreaking happened 3 weeks later. Grace had donated 2 acres of her land, the portion near the lake that Crane had so desperately wanted, for the construction of the Thomas Hartley Community Center. A place for veterans, for seniors, for troubled youth. A place where people could find support when they had nowhere else to turn. The Hells Angels contributed the labor. 30 bikers working alongside townspeople, laying foundation and framing walls, improving every stereotype wrong. Never thought I'd see the day, Edgar muttered. Watching Diesel teach a group of teenagers how to use a power drill. Hells Angels building a community center. My daddy would roll over in his grave. Times change, Ryder said. People change. That's the whole point. Suppose so. Edgar handed him a bottle of water. You done good, son. Thomas would be proud. Ryder felt something catch in his throat. You knew my father. Knew him, hell, we were friends for 30 years, fished together every Sunday until his accident. Edgar's eyes grew distant. He talked about you, you know, all the time, even after you left, even after years went by without a word. He never gave up on you. He died before I could make things right. Maybe, but making things right isn't always about the dead. Sometimes it's about the living, about showing up, about doing the work. Edgar gestured at the construction site. This is the work, Ryder. This is what making things right looks like. Ryder looked around at the bikers and the townspeople, at his mother serving lemonade at Maya, chasing Lily across the grass. Yeah, he said quietly. I think I'm starting to understand that. The first anniversary of the slap approached faster than anyone expected. Helen Chen returned to Copper Ridge to do a follow-up story. She found a town transformed, not just physically, but spiritually. The fear that had gripped it for so long had been replaced by something else, something harder to name, but impossible to miss. Hope, Grace told her during the interview. That's what's different, and people have hope again. And how are you doing? Grace considered the question. I spent 18 years as a widow. 18 years alone, waiting for something to change, knowing it probably never would. And then one day a man walked into a diner and slapped me across the face, and everything changed. Do you regret what happened? No, strange as it sounds, I don't. That slap woke something up in me, made me realize I'd been sleeping through my own life, waiting to die instead of choosing to live. She smiled. Sometimes the worst things that happen to us become the best things. We just don't see it until later. And your son Ryder, Grace's smile deepened. He came home. After 8 years, he came home. And he stayed. He stayed. He stayed. Ryder had made the decision a week earlier. He'd been standing in his mother's kitchen washing dishes when it hit him. This was what he wanted. Not the road, not the running. The simple, ordinary rhythm of a life shared with people who loved him. He'd called Iron Jack that night. I'm not coming back, not full time. I'll always be a brother, always answer the call if you need me. But my home is here now. Jack was quiet for a moment. Took you long enough. Yeah, it did. Your mother know. Not yet, gonna tell her tomorrow. She's going to cry. Probably this time. You're going to cry too. Probably that too. Jack laughed, a rare sound from a man who'd seen too much to find him much funny anymore. You did good, Hawk, finding your way back. Most of us never do. Most of us don't have a mother like mine. No, we don't. He told Grace the next morning to breakfast. She didn't cry. Instead, she went very still, her coffee cup frozen halfway to her lips. Say that again. I'm staying, Ma, here, in Copper Ridge. I found a garage for sale on the edge of town, old Pete Morrison's place. Going to buy it, fix it up, open a repair shop. A repair shop? Motorcycles mostly, but cars too, whatever people need. Grace set down her cup. And the club, the road. Everything you have been chasing for 30 years. It'll still be there. But it doesn't have to be everything, you know. Not anymore that it does. She stood up, walked around the table and wrapped her arms around him. She was so small, barely came up to his chest, but her grip was fierce. I've been waiting 18 years to hear those words. I know, Ma, I know. Promise me you won't change your mind. Ryder held her tighter. I promise. The anniversary ride was Duchess's idea. We should do something to mark the occasion. Something that shows people what the club really stands for. Ryder had been skeptical at first. I don't want to make a spectacle of my mother's trauma. It's not about the trauma. It's about the response to the trauma. It's about showing the world that Hell's Angels aren't what the media says we are. That we protect people. That we stand up for those who can't stand up for themselves. She had a point, and when Ryder brought it up to Grace, she surprised him. I think it's a wonderful idea. You do. Yes, but not just for the club, for the whole town, for everyone who found their courage that week. Let's make it a celebration of what we overcame together. And so the first annual Copper Ridge Angel Ride was born. The morning of the ride dawned clear and bright. Motorcycles began arriving at sunrise. Not just Hell's Angels riders from all over the country, from every club and no club at all, united by a story that had captured something true about the American spirit. By noon, there were over 200 bikes lined up on Main Street. Grace stood on the steps of Grace's place, looking out at the sea of chrome and leather with wonder. I never thought. She trailed off, unable to find the words. Me neither, Ma. Ryder stood beside her, his own bike polished and ready. He debated whether to ride, whether to leave his mother for even a few hours on this day of all days. But she'd insisted. You have to lead them. It's your ride as much as anyone's. It's your ride, Ma. Your name, your story. Our story. She squeezed his hand. Now go. I'll be here when you get back. You always are. The ride began at Wyme, 200 motorcycles stretching half a mile down Route 66, engines rumbling like thunder. Ryder rode at the front, Iron Jack on his right, Duchess on his left. Behind them came the brothers and sisters from a dozen chapters. Behind them came the townspeople who'd found their courage. Behind them came riders who'd traveled thousands of miles just to be part of something bigger than themselves. They rode through Copper Ridge, first past Grace's place, in the hardware store, in the church where Rosa Mendoza stood on the steps making the sign of the cross as they passed. Then out into the desert, along the winding roads that hugged Red Canyon Lake, past the construction site, where the Thomas Hartley Community Center was taking shape. Finally, they circled back to Grace's property, where a massive barbecue was already underway. Ryder killed his engine and sat for a moment just breathing. Preacher pulled up beside him. Hell of a day, brother. Hell of a day. Your daddy would be proud. Ryder looked up at the sky, clear and blue and endless. I hope so. The party lasted until sunset. There was food and music and laughter. There were stories shared and tears shed and old wounds finally beginning to heal. Maya danced with Lily on the grass. Edgar taught Diesel how to play horseshoes. Rosa led the crowd in a prayer of thanksgiving that somehow managed to be both Catholic and inclusive of the leather-clad heathens surrounding her. And through it all, Grace sat on her porch, watching her world transform. Ryder found her there as the sun began to dip below the mountains. Quite a party. Quite a life. She patted the space beside her on the swing. Sit with me. He sat. You know what I was thinking about today? She asked. What? That morning, the morning of the slap. I woke up thinking it was going to be just another day. Coffee at the diner. Walk home. Silence. loneliness, the same routine I'd been stuck in for 18 years. And instead, everything changed, everything. She took his hand. I know what Vince did was terrible. I know what he intended was even worse. But if it hadn't happened, you wouldn't be here. This town wouldn't have woken up. All these people, she gestured at the crowd. They wouldn't have found each other. That's a strange way to look at it. Maybe, but I've learned something, Ryder. Pain isn't always the enemy. Sometimes it's the wake-up call. The thing that shakes you out of your sleep and reminds you that you're still that you still have time to change. Ryder thought about that. Is that why you forgave him, Vince? Partly, but mostly I forgave him because holding on to hate was killing me, eating me from the inside. And I didn't survive all of this just to poison myself with bitterness. You're a better person than I am. No, baby, I'm just older. I've had more time to learn. She leaned her head against his shoulder. You'll get there. They sat in silence, watching the last rays of sunlight paint the desert gold. I love you, Ma. I love you too, son, more than you'll ever know. As night fell, the riders prepared to leave. 200 motorcycles heading back to their homes, their families, their lives. But something had changed for all of them. They'd been part of something meaningful, something real, something that would stay with them long after the engines cooled. Iron Jack found Ryder at the edge of the property. You sure you're not coming with us? I'm sure. Going to be strange not having Hawk on the road. Hawk's retired, just Ryder now. Jack studied him for a long moment. You know what I think? I think Hawk was never the real you. He was the armor you wore because you were too scared to be vulnerable. Too scared to let anyone in. Maybe. No, maybe about it. I've known you 30 years. Watched you build that wall brick by brick after your daddy died. But walls don't protect you, brother. They just keep everyone out, including the people who love you. Ryder felt his eyes sting. When did you get so philosophical? I've always been philosophical. You just never listened. Jack pulled him into a fierce hug. Take care of yourself, brother. Take care of your mother. And if you ever need us, I know where to find you. Damn right you do. Jack mounted his bike, gunned the engine, and rode off into the darkness. One by one, the other riders followed until only the sound of distant thunder remained. Then silence. True silence. The kind that comes after a storm has passed. Ryder walked back to the house and found his mother standing in the doorway. They're gone. They are. Will they come back? Next year, same time, and every year after that as long as I'm breathing. Grace smiled. Then I better live a long time. I've got a lot of barbecues to plan. 6 months later, the Thomas Hartley Community Center opened its doors. The ribbon-cutting ceremony drew politicians, reporters, and most importantly, the people who would actually use the space. Veterans struggling with PTSD, seniors facing isolation, teenagers looking for direction, anyone who needed a place to belong. Grace gave the opening speech. My husband dreamed of building something that would help this community. He died before he could do it. But dreams don't die with the people who dream them. They live on in the hearts of those who remember and in the hands of those brave enough to make them real. She looked out at the crowd, at Ryder, at Maya, at Lily, at all the faces that had become family. This center isn't a memorial to Thomas Hartley. It's a promise. A promise that as long as there are people willing to help each other, there will always be hope. Even in the darkest times, even when it seems like the world has forgotten you. She paused, gathering herself. 1 year ago, I was slapped to the ground in front of 40 people who did nothing. Today, I'm standing in front of hundreds of people who do everything. That's not a miracle. That's a choice each of you made every day to be better, to be braver, to be the person you wish someone had been for you. She smiled. My son came home because a young woman made a phone call. My home was saved because strangers on motorcycles believed that protecting an old widow was worth the ride. This center exists because a town decided it was done being afraid. Her voice grew stronger. So remember this, you are never too old to matter. You are never too alone to be found. And you are never too far gone to come home. She cut the ribbon. The crowd erupted in applause. And Ryder, standing at the back of the room, finally let the tears fall. That night, Ryder sat alone in his garage. The repair shop was coming along. He'd fixed up the old building, installed new equipment, even hired a part-time assistant, a troubled kid named Marcus, who reminded him of himself at that age. Angry, lost, looking for something to believe in. He was wiping down his tools when the door opened. "Thought I'd find you here." Grace walked in wrapped in her familiar shawl. "Ma, it's late. You should be home." "So should you, but here we are." She sat on the old stool by the workbench. "You gave a good speech today," Ryder said. "It wasn't a speech. It was the truth." "Same thing sometimes." They sat in comfortable silence. "I've been thinking," Grace said finally, "about what you asked me once. Why I never gave up on you. Why I kept waiting year after year even when you gave me every reason to stop." "And Mom, because that's what mothers do. We wait, we hope. We believe in our children even when they've stopped believing in themselves." She reached over and took his hand. "You were lost, Ryder, for a long time, but you were never gone. I always knew you'd find your way back." How could you possibly know that?" "Because I know who raised you, and I know that deep down underneath all the leather and the ink and the anger, you're still the little boy who cried when we had to put the dog down. The boy who gave his lunch money to the kid who didn't have any. The boy who told me at 6 years old that when he grew up, he was going to protect everyone who needed protecting." Ryder's throat tightened. "I forgot I said that." "I didn't. I never forgot." She squeezed his hand. "And look at you now. You came home and you did exactly what you promised. You protected me. You protected this town. You protected everyone who needed you." "I'm not a hero, Ma." "No, you're something better. You're a good man who makes mistakes and keeps trying anyway. That's all any of us can be." Ryder pulled her into a hug. "Thank you, Ma, for never giving up. Thank you, son, for finally coming home." The final image of this story is not one of violence or drama. It's a quiet morning in Copper Ridge, Arizona. The sun is rising over the mountains. The diner is opening its doors. The community center is welcoming its first visitors of the day. And on the porch of a small adobe house on the edge of town, a 77-year-old woman sits with her son drinking coffee, watching the world wake up. They don't speak. They don't need to. After everything they've been through, the pain, the separation, the long years of silence, they've finally found what they were looking for. Not answers, not explanations, not even forgiveness, just each other. And that's enough. Somewhere out there on some highway, neither of them can name a group of Hell's Angels is riding toward the sunrise. They wear leather and chrome and patches that make people cross the street. But today they're not riding to fight. They're not riding to hide. They're riding because that's what they do. Because the road is home, and the road is freedom, and the road never judges you for what you've been, only for what you choose to be. Ryder thinks about that sometimes, about the man he was and the man he became, about the choices that led him away from this porch and the choices that brought him back. He used to believe that some mistakes couldn't be fixed, that some distances were too far to travel, that once you'd crossed certain lines, there was no coming back. He was wrong. There's always a way back, always a door waiting to open, always someone willing to believe in you if you're brave enough to let them. His mother taught him that. This town taught him that. And now every day he tries to teach it to others, because that's what Hell's Angels do. Not the ones the media talks about, not the ones in the movies or the news, the real ones, the ones who ride 1,000 miles to protect a stranger, the ones who build community centers and fix fences and show up when it matters, the ones who prove again and again that not all angels have wings. Some wear leather, some ride Harleys, and some spend their whole lives running from home only to realize that home was waiting for them all along. Grace takes a sip of her coffee and smiles. Ryder takes a sip of his and smiles back. And somewhere in the distance, an engine roars, the sound of justice, the sound of hope, the sound of angels on the road. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs to hear it, because kindness is contagious. Courage is contagious, and sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is remind someone that they're not alone. Not all angels have wings, some wear leather, and they ride for those who can't.